because we've got an important presentation by Dani Penner. And Dani has been a person who's been with us for several years. She's recently graduated with her master's degree in women's studies at Eastern Michigan University. And she also recently got married. So she's used to be, uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
oh yeah, used to be Dani Foster, and now she's Dani Penner. And one of the other cool things is that Dani's whole specialty in terms of the work she was doing and with her degree in women's studies was the topic that she's going to be presenting on today, which is DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dani, and you can kind of give us an outline, not only what is DEI, but also what is it that we need to do to stand up for it, because the Trump administration seems to want to be able to attack diversity in this country, which could be diversity in terms of race and gender identity, equity, inclusion, and so forth. So, at any rate, Dani, you're on, and we thank you for doing this important presentation.
Of course, good morning, everyone. I apologize for any technical difficulties. I have no idea what happened, to be quite honest, but I'm glad that you are able to be here. Randy did a lovely introduction for me, but just a little bit more about me. My name's Dani. I use she, her pronouns. I have a master's in women's and gender studies from Eastern Michigan University. I'm a longtime activist. I've been doing activism since I was about 15 years old, so a little over 10 years. I'm an advocate for DEIA, and I'm very passionate about numerous social justice issues. My research in my master's program focused on DEIA in higher education, the impacts on campus culture and sense of belonging. So I mostly focused on higher education, but I also included numerous different scopes within my research that I did and I just completed and allowed me to graduate.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So for today's presentation, I'll go over a little bit of what DEIA is, where are we sitting now? I did this presentation a little over a year ago, and we have had some changes, and as well as my call to action for all of you. So what is DEIA? Most commonly known as DEI. So the D represents diversity, and this is the practice of including people from a range of ethnic backgrounds, different genders, sexual orientations, etc. The E is equity, which is the principle of fairness, justice, and impartiality. And it is basically a system or a place where everyone is treated equally. Inclusion is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities, resources, rights for the people who are marginalized, and just making sure that everyone feels that they belong where they are at. And then I add accessibility into my definition of DEIA. So accessibility is a quality or condition of being accessible or being able to be used or accessed by people with disabilities or regardless of their ability. I find that this is really important because if we aren't including everybody, then we aren't truly being inclusive and diverse and equitable. So we also want to make sure that people are able to access resources, people are able to participate in different things, etc. So I have added accessibility into my definition, same thing in my research. Let's see, that was the very end. Give me 1 second. Apparently me and technology are not on the same page today. So some examples specifically of DEIA, I wanted to point out some that are very common to see or ones that you might come across in everyday life. So ramps in front of buildings. for wheelchair access or anyone that might be using a mobility aid or have limited movement. That is part of DEIA. That's an accessibility feature. Hiring someone regardless of their race or sexuality or orientation is a DEIA practice of ensuring that that there's a diverse workforce and that people are being included. Maternity and paternity leave is also a part of DEIA. That's another one to make sure one, equity between mothers, fathers, and other parents in the relationship, as well as providing flexibility to parents in the workplace. They might need to leave more often for kids' doctor's appointments. They need some time off when first having their children, etc. Another example is having flexible holiday time off. So some companies, instead of saying these are the exact holidays you have to take off, they have flexible days. So if someone, for example, is practicing and following the Muslim religion, they might have different holidays, or the Jewish religions, they might have different holidays than Christian religions, such as Christmas, Easter, etc. So providing flexible time off is a great example of ways to make sure that we're being inclusive. Closed captions, which you'll see I have on today, is part of accessibility, making sure that people who are hard of hearing are able to follow along with what's being said, as well as some people just prefer to read versus just listening. Everybody processes information differently. The use of inclusive language, such as using pronouns or using gender neutral language, such as paternity for parents or caregivers, etc., is another way to make sure that everybody is feeling included and welcome in their environment. Adjustable lighting is one that really helps people who are neurodivergent, who may have autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, etc., to make sure that they aren't feeling overwhelmed. Equal pay, regardless of gender, is another example of DEIA, making sure that people are being paid fairly for the work that they're doing, regardless of their gender identity and how they choose to identify. So, those are a few of the examples that I have for you. These are ones that you'll commonly see in kind of just in everyday life. So the question I most often get asked is, why do we need this? Why does this exist? Isn't this wasting money, etc.? So we need DEIA because it ensures that everyone, regardless of their background, their culture, ability, etc., have an equal opportunity. Not only that, but it teaches children, teens, and adults the importance of treating people equally and the beauty that you can find in differences. The most common myth that I have heard, not only from our current administration, but just from talking to people, is, doesn't this cost a lot of money to have? And in reality, DEIA is one of the most underfunded programs amongst employers in higher education. It typically is less than like 3 to 5% of an annual budget. So it's a very low cost just to ensure that people are feeling that they belong in their workplace, in their college, in their schools, etc. So it is not as costly as people are making it out to be. It is so minimal and it's less cost and more so just about treating people equally and having policies written in to companies or into higher education that ensure that people are having fair access. So that is, I think that's the biggest myth. I've also heard that we just don't need it, which is not true because currently, as I will do next, is our recap. So starting back in January 25, 3 executive orders rolled out banning DEI language, as well as different like programs and initiatives, specifically starting in government. So there were 3 executive orders. Day one, Trump signed that said we're going to get rid of the use of DEIA language in any government websites, outreach, etc. They said that we had to make sure to protect women, that there were different things happening that were causing just different gender disparities that were not happening, that DEIA was actually working to fix. So that was the very first thing that happened in the presidency, and that kind of set off a very quick rolling spiral ball of different things happening throughout different branches of our government, different areas of society, etc. A month later, in February of 25, colleges across the nation received what they call the Dear Colleague letter, which ordered them to end all DEIA language usage, all programs, initiatives, etc., or they will lose their federal funding. Personally, at Eastern, we of course got this letter, and instead of getting rid of our DEIA, we renamed it so it followed along with with the new rules and regulations. I see Paul has a question.
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt, but in that letter, what was their explanation for the reason to get rid of it? I don't understand. Was it a cost thing, or do they just say, "Oh, we want to treat people differently, and
Yeah,
we want to discriminate against people"? What possible reason could they give?
the biggest reason that they gave was that the government was no longer allowing this language, partially because of cost, partially because it was unnecessary, and it was wasteful spending. And because colleges receive federal funding, they were told they have to follow new federal guidelines through the executive orders. So they were told that if they didn't remove it, they were going to lose their funding from the government, because the government is now following the banning of DEI language and programs because of, quote, wasteful spending and unnecessary initiatives. So that was their reason. And yeah, colleges across the nation all chose a different approach. So some of them stuck really firm and said, nope, we don't need your funding. We'll figure it out on our own. Princeton, for example, is one of those that said, we don't need your funding. And they kept all of their DEIA language. Many of them just renamed, like Eastern did. Everything internally stayed the same. We just slapped a new name on it, so it followed new guidelines. So we went from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office to the Office of Access and Opportunity. So that cleared us. Some colleges decided to get rid of DEIA altogether, such as U of M Ann Arbor. They took this opportunity to completely eliminate their DEIA initiatives. Many of their staff, I've talked to numerous of their staff members and students, they still hold the value of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, but the school itself does not maintain that language or those programs. And then some universities just chose to roll back some of their programs. Michigan State was one of them that just chose to roll back a little bit and rename a few things. But after this, colleges across the nation had lawyers everywhere figuring out, what are we going to do? Do we need our federal funding? Are we going to stick firm? Are we going to give in? Are we just going to rename? And then in that same month, Trump then signed an executive order banning transgender women to play in women's sports. So this especially affected high schools, for people and transgender people that were participating in sports that aligned with their gender identity. This impacted college students who were playing athletics. This doesn't impact professional sports as much, but there were some professional sports that were very open to transgender people playing sports within that aligned with their gender identity. I even know that there were talks around the Olympics of whether or not to let certain people participate because of their gender identity or the way that they were testing in regards to their uh, having like too much estrogen, too much testosterone, etc. Even if they weren't transgender, there was a whole conversation about, well, where do we draw that line? The next year, it just kind of floated in this space of, okay, now what? We have gotten rid of, the government has put all of these bans in place through executive orders. Colleges are now unsure what to do. So the next year is just kind of floating in this gray, unknown area of what's legal, what's not legal, and where are we going to go from here. So February 2026, the U.S. Department put out a statement that they would be backing down from the Dear Colleague letter. This was somewhat unexpected, but it was a bit of a glimmer of hope. So the Department of Education came to realize that the Dear Colleague letter perhaps was not as legal as they were led to believe. Now, many colleges did not rebrand. Here at Eastern, we did not rebrand because rebranding costs a lot of money and time. So right now we are still sitting at the Office of Access and Opportunity. But there were some colleges that kind of started to slowly put that DEIA language back into some of their like websites and social media, etc. And this was kind of the first time in a while that we had seen DEIA kind of have a resurgence of like, okay, like maybe we're going back in the right direction. Well, then March of 2026 happened, and another executive order was signed that required any contractors or subcontractors that were working for the government or a government agency specifically had to verify that they were not utilizing DEIA initiatives or language in their companies. But they did not provide guidelines of what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, just that they have to align with the government values of the original executive orders from January 2025. Now, this can be very difficult to regulate businesses that you have no direct control over, and you are just contracting out for work that you don't own, you don't oversee, you don't manage. So this kind of floated around for a few months, and that brings us to June of 26. That brings us to this month, where 21 states, including our state here in Michigan, have jumped onto a lawsuit against the March executive order, saying that there's no clear explanation of what this means. Is this legal? Can they regulate a company that they don't own or oversee or fund? And right now, it's just kind of sitting in that initial, like, we're bringing a federal lawsuit stage. So I'm hoping that this kickstarts some other lawsuits at determining the legalities of some of these executive orders and what to do from here, because that's kind of where we're floating right now. We're still in this weird space of like, okay, we have a glimmer of hope, but also things are still happening that are really negative and impacting a lot of the community. So specifically, where are we at this very moment in time? So there is ongoing implementation of the executive orders from 25 and 26. We're still seeing those existing. We're still seeing governments, especially our federal government, really honing in on anti-DEI language and banning DEIA in any way that they can. We have seen further polarization in the nation regarding DEIA, and there have been large spikes in hate-related harassment and crime, especially for the LGBTQIA plus community, as well as people of color. There have been large, especially online harassment is very high right now. Being someone that is on social media and very involved with social media, even just going through comments of videos that have nothing to do with this topic. It could just be someone sharing what they did today or an item that they liked that they purchased. still being attacked because um, they're indigenous or they identify with the queer community. We've also seen companies publicly or even quietly removing DEIA programs, initiatives from stores, offices, and workplaces. I will go into a little bit further where we're at company-wise, because that's something that impacts all of us. We shop, we invest, and it's in our day-to-day life in society. We are in a capitalistic society, so companies are involved in our regular life. And then we've also seen states that have put further restrictions in place for DEIA issues, or ones that even kickstarted it, such as Florida, starting with the Don't Say Gay bill numerous years ago. Many states have kind of really honed in on this, and this includes making a lot of barriers for people with uteruses or those who can conceive and get pregnant to not have access to the type of care that they need, whether that be an abortion service or that be just parental prenatal care, etc. Um, that also is part of DEIA because people are not receiving fair access to care. They're not receiving the care that they need. It's excluding them because of their anatomy and being able to have a child. So we're seeing numerous different laws be put in place across states. And DEIA is everywhere, even in the littlest of things. And that's the importance of us having it. So I wanted to, yes, Dave. You are muted.
Paul told us hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Paul told us a couple Paul told us a couple years ago that to say there's only X and Y, there's only two genders is ridiculous. He was an OBGYN. And I remember I don't remember seeing too much about this now. But the reality is that we've got I go back 30 years, 40 years. I remember the United States going crazy over it was Russian and I think it was Chinese delegates to the Olympics that they questioned their sexuality, and it was embarrassing. And what I remember was that nothing ever came of it. We just complained. Uh, I would imagine these were trans young men and women. I don't care, don't matter to me at all. But is it an issue? They've made a really big deal out of a 6 foot guy, skinny as hell, running against 5'10" women or 5'8" women. Is that an issue, or has that been an issue in the United States? I don't think so myself.
When we think about sports specifically, for the most part, even transgender individuals that are competing are not dominating that area. They're not dominating um, their sport of choice with their gender identity. There have been a few instances, as more so in swimming, that I've seen where transgender women have won, but not necessarily because of their biological sex, but just because they have the skills to win. Um,
And the will.
yeah, so we see this a lot. We hear this conversation a lot. And in my opinion, from the research that I've done and the different areas that I've looked into, there is no reason to be banning trans people from sports. They don't have some competitive advantage. It's not there. It's just based on pure skill and them feeling comfortable in their body and their identity and being able to compete in a space that they feel comfortable and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So jumping back into companies, as of 2026, Apple is really diving into maintaining their DEIA initiatives. They have numerous statements out of the importance of maintaining this. Costco is another one that is really sticking to their DEIA initiatives. They have, since day one, said that we are not getting rid of these. And if you don't want to shop with us anymore, then fine. Microsoft, which did surprise me a little bit, is also sticking with their DEIA initiatives and programs that they have, including they have like a Women Who Code program and things like that that give more opportunities to women in the coding and computer field. Trader Joe's has stuck to their DEIA initiatives. Kroger has stuck with theirs as well. Michael's Craft Store actively has stuff out for Pride right now, and they have stuck with their DEIA initiatives. Our very own local Meyer has stated that they are committed to maintaining diversity and that the company was built on it. So I was very excited because I do like Meyer. And then in more clothing apparel, Nike has stated that they are sticking with their DEIA initiatives. We have seen them over the past like 5 years or so include different models and things like that that have leg amputations, or they've created sports safe headscarves for people who wear a hijab or prefer to compete with their hair covered. So they have made actual initiatives and strides in their clothing and their accessibility to make sure that everyone feels like they can participate in their sports and feel that they are able to feel comfortable in what they're wearing. Some companies that are not supporting DEIA as of 2026 are ones that have significantly rolled them back. Walmart, so that also includes Sam's Club. They were one of the first ones to be like, all right, great, we're getting rid of DEIA. Target, which was a very unexpected turn of events because Target has always been a leader. While they have still may not put out or put back out their diversity, equity, and inclusion statements, they have quietly been promoting brands from people of color in their stores, and they still are doing like monthly, awareness things. So they have stuff out. They had stuff out for Black History Month, for Pride, etc. Yes, this is technically a money grab, but Walmart's not doing it, so it's something. So while Target still does not technically have their DEIA, it seems that they are starting to slowly change their mind a little bit. I know that the CEO has even started to be like, maybe we messed up. Amazon, which is no surprise, is not supporting DEIA. Lowe's is not pretty much any home improvement store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, got rid of any DEIA policies that they may have had. Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, some of the largest social media platforms outside of TikTok and Snapchat, they do not support DEIA, which again, very unsurprising, kind of new from the start. McDonald's got rid of all of their DEIA, which is very interesting because they are one of the largest fast food chains across the world. And are it's a big global name. And it's very interesting because depending on the country you go to, depends on the menu you get, which typically aligns with cultural and religious values in that country. So very interesting that they got rid of their DEIA, considering they are practicing it, whether they think they are or not. Tractor Supply, which is a farming store, for those who may not know, got rid of all of their DEIA very, very quickly and put out some pretty hateful statements about the LGBTQIA community. And then Pepsi also rolled back their DEIA, so that is numerous, anything under the Pepsi brand, any drinks under the Pepsi brand. And then while Coke technically stuck to their DEIA, they also called ICE on many of their workers in factories. So that's not very DEIA of them. So I would also put them on the list of, while they technically say they support it, they also called immigration on the majority of their factory employees, regardless of their immigration status. So take with that what you will. My personal opinion was I don't drink that much pop anyway. So I pretty much avoided Coke. But so now is the big question, is there any hope? Yes. As scary as it is right now, as disheartening as it is, especially starting a master's degree in women's and gender studies to go into DEIA in 2024 and waking up in January of 2025 to all of your aspirations being thrown out the window, I still say that there is hope. Many companies have pushed back and they're sticking with their DEIA commitments. Lawsuits are underway to determine the legalities of executive orders. And many colleges are still prioritizing their DEIA, even if it's renamed. There's small pockets everywhere of people who are still supporting DEIA. Numerous local businesses you'll find that are supporting DEIA, especially in more liberal areas. I live in Washtenaw County. I don't know if I've ever come into a local business that doesn't have a pride flag or a Black Lives Matter sign, um, including all the residents here. So there's glimmers of hope everywhere. There's pockets of hope everywhere. So don't give up yet. I promise you the work that we're doing is making a difference somewhere. And I'm very hopeful to see changes in the next, we're in 26, next like 2 years. So this is my calls to action for all of you. And then I will go into a little bit more about what specifically I'm asking our organization to do. So vote. Please, please, please vote. I don't think there's anything that we have expressed more in this organization than to use your right to vote. There are candidates out there that want to back DEIA and make sure that people are being treated equitably and are feeling included and have the resources that they need. It is more important now than ever to vote in every election, no matter how small it is, local, midterms, special elections, because your vote matters. Your one vote could legitimately change an election. Your getting out to vote proves that people want to vote and exercise their right to vote. So please, please, please vote. And if you ever have any questions on how to research about candidates or how to research about different policies or things that are being put on your ballot, please reach out to us. Vote to preserve democracy. Please reach out to us. We have lots of voting resources on the board. I have lots of voting resources that I utilize myself. A big shout out to the League of Women Voters for their Vote 411 when they update that every year. Super helpful. Other things to do, if you are in a financial position where you're able to donate to organizations that support DEIA, such as the ACLU or the Trevor Foundation, Trevor Project. The ACLU often has lawyers that help people when they are in lawsuits and they have been discriminated against. The Trevor Foundation and Trevor Project help LGBTQIA youth in crisis, including a support line, especially for transgender individuals. So just always make sure to research before you donate to know what their true values are. Do they align with yours? Do they align with what you're hoping to do? Along with donate, which I didn't put on here, support local. If you can support local businesses that are supporting DEIA and are aligning with your morals and values, always support local when you're able to. We live in a capitalistic society, and supporting local helps everybody, helps your local economy, and helps your neighbors out. Combat misinformation. There, like I said, the biggest thing you'll hear is that DEIA is expensive. It's hard to, it's wasteful spending. When you hear it, combat it. It doesn't take long. Do a quick Google search. One thing really interesting, Google Scholar is a great resource to find journal articles and published research. Some people will listen to that more than a typical news source. So I use Google Scholar for a lot of my research. And then when we send out our after meeting, like, hey, here's a recording and everything, I will also provide a book list of different books that I read for my research or that I've really enjoyed that just tackle DEIA subjects. And some of them are also friendly for kids. So if anyone has nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, etc., some of them are just really good books. There was a graphic novel that I read about a ice skater who came out as lesbian and her journey with that. And it's a comic and it was really wonderful. And then the other thing is boycott when you're able. This is not possible for everybody. Um, Simply everything is expensive. Sometimes Walmart is the cheapest. Sometimes Target is the cheapest. Sometimes you are in a food desert where your only option is Walmart or Dollar General. But if you're able to, try to put your money into local businesses that support DEIA or just reduce your spending on Amazon or whatever. It sounds simple. It's not. From a college student who just graduated, life is expensive, and there is no shame in needing to provide for yourself and for your families, regardless of the companies that you're supporting. But if you're able to reduce your spending at some of these stores or, change where your money is going and you are privileged enough to do that, then I do encourage that. As an organization, which we will talk about as a board later, I am really hoping that the Great Panthers will make a statement on DEIA and our support for it. And then we will send out, of course, our call to action with the recording from today, as well as like the book recommendation list that I will get put together and sent over to send out as well. So those are my calls to action for all of you and for our organization. So thank you so much for coming. I wanted to make sure not to drown on too long just because I started a little bit late. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And then I did put my email. So if anyone wants to email me directly to talk further about my research, please feel free. And then Dave, I see your hand first. And then I'm going to end this so I can see all of your wonderful faces.
I think it's something that a number of have a faith orientation, and to me, my faith tells me I have to be decent, treat other people as I'd like to be treated. We have a Washington D.C. now that's totally taken over by what people they call themselves Christians. I don't think they're Christians at all, but the reality is that whatever faith you are, whatever non-faith you are, doesn't matter. The golden rule: treat others as you like to be treated. I mean, it's so simple. I mean, and I can't believe, and I'm getting too political, and I apologize, but the reality is that I know how much Paul cares, how many people here care about other people, and it's something that we should be doing that from the rooftops, and I think it's something that my family. I've heard people talk about how terrible it is at holidays because they got to be all together with their family. My family is all together. We don't have to do that. I have a brother in California that I don't talk to because he's an absolute ass. But the reality is that he hates everybody. So it's a lot easier to love than it is to hate. Thanks. I don't mean to rant on.
That is okay. I completely understand where you're coming from. And I've heard religion especially be utilized as a reason to not support numerous things in DEIA. And I agree with you that though I am not personally Christian or religious, the biggest thing I've ever learned and heard was love your neighbor. Love your neighbor, love yourself, and love the people that you are with. And I think that is something we definitely need to keep yelling and screaming from the rooftops. Paul?
Yeah, just want to say, first of all, I certainly agree with Dave and what he calls white Christian nationalists. Really, some people would tell us that a better description is religious fascists. And and almost every religion has their fascist extremists
Absolutely.
who promote hate, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, what's happened in Gaza, or Islam, all the 9/11 and everything. That's the way it is. But what I wanted to ask a question to Dani about what's happening in the courts right now. I noticed you said about all these states were suing about the executive orders, and I assume our Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel is part of that. But
Yep.
are there some pending? I didn't pay attention to the news yesterday, see if there are any Supreme Court rulings come out in this regard. Are we expecting
Yeah.
in this term?
I
I
have
see.
not I have not heard of any specifically that are in like big news, besides the one that the 21 states are signed on to, which I will send the link to that as soon as I find it. Randy actually sent it to me, which I had heard about it. I just didn't have a great link to send about it, but Randy sent me a wonderful article about it. But there's nothing that I've specifically heard that is like, oh, we want this decision, we're waiting for this decision. A lot of it is just small things. And this is kind of the biggest one of them actually challenging the executive orders to a level that's made it to a federal lawsuit with 21 states on there. And there could be more to sign on as well. So I will send that over. But if I do hear anything, if I do hear of any major decisions that we're waiting for, I will share that with the board so that you are all kept up to date on what is happening. And then we can send it out to our email list as well. Are there any other questions?
Danny,
Yeah.
this is Kathleen. Yeah, good presentation. I guess one thing that I've sort of learned over the last few years now, when it related to the lists that you were talking about, the lists of who to maybe patronize and who not to patronize, is that I think we might have to really keep that kind of a running dynamic list, because as you were alluding to, people are changing and organizations are changing. And as it relates to DEIA, this is an organizational culture that we're changing. It isn't necessarily always running right down to the way that individual franchises of the corporate level, at the corporate level, that how they're operating. And I would
Yep.
say that in my community here in Southfield, as it relates to, I guess you could push back and say, you didn't mention Starbucks, but there's good and bad about Starbucks, right? I mean, Starbucks is good because they are on a lot of levels DEIA. You can see it. You see it in the way the places are managed, the franchises, et cetera, right down to T-shirts and stuff. Negative on that is that they're quite anti-union, and I think Dave Ivers and a few others here could speak to that more eloquently than I could. So there's like good and bad on that. But so you have to kind of take a look and see, well, what's the culture sometimes at the specific store, the specific entity that you're patronizing. Another example I'll have is that you had mentioned that Lowe's, as well as most of the home improvement corporations and stuff, probably should go on the bad person list. But the Lowe's where I'm at, they're all of the folks that are there, probably 99%. Are of color. They're managed by people of color. It's a great Lowe's. It's the best Lowe's. It is the only home improvement place that we'll go to. And so I think that there's corporate ethos, as it were. And then there's the way that people are working at on a day in and day out basis. And so I think that we've got to look at that as well. That's my comment. Thank you,
I
Jane.
I completely agree. That's why I said there's always pockets of people, even in large organizations, that are still there to support, are still there to help. And especially when it comes to franchises like Duncan and different things like that, they all have their own personal, motives and individualistic ideas. So it's so important. And it's also important to keep researching because, like I said, there's numerous companies that have changed, flip-flopped, etc. And I normally just do a quick Google search, does blank support DEIA, and see what comes up. And that's the most important thing I can do is just to take a look before I shop or put my money somewhere when I'm able to. So thank you, Kathleen. Ben?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to go back to the point of the lawsuits, the state lawsuits. You understand that under our Constitution, the president and the executive body is their job, sworn job, is to enforce the law as Congress has provided. And there are a whole lot of things over these last 50 years that are positive DEI legislation that say basically, uh, President, this is the law, you carry it out, and not something that's opposite to that. And so there's a lot of room, legal room, to challenge this absurd policy.
That is the little bit of hope that I'm holding on to, is that I know there's something out there and someone will take on that challenge.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so glad to see the 21 states taking on this challenge right now, because it's opening a door to more. And sometimes we just need to see one lawsuit that's successful before others kind of jump on that train. So that is my glimmer of hope for this next, hopefully, 6 months.
This is Randy, and I'm been trying to follow especially because you, Danny, have been like a person who I've admired for your efforts to try to understand and make a commitment to educating and about DEIA. But are there, in addition to, let's say, the ACLU, which is standing up for a lot of things, what are some of the major allies in Michigan that are working to educate and activate people about DEI? Feels like we're just kind of like, there's not enough efforts not enough other groups out there that are doing this education. And if you can tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, the ACLU of Michigan is definitely the biggest one that I know of. They do a lot of work, and obviously there's in each and every state there are some. There's also local organizations like LGBT Detroit. They do numerous different LGBT education events, including fun ones and educational ones. They'll sometimes host different, like kind of like dance parties and different fun activities. Um, One that isn't a specific organization, but your local library. The Detroit Public Library and all of their branches have so many DEIA programs and guest speakers. I post them all of the time on our events page. But check your local libraries, because a lot of times they are here to educate as well. And they have tons of awesome guest speakers and authors that come in, or they might share a movie or documentary. So check your local libraries, support them when you're able to. One, they're important, and two, they do a lot of wonderful things for our community. The League of Women Voters in Michigan is another one. Yes, they mostly focus on voting, but they are making sure that you are educated on democracy and the decisions that you're making and who you're supporting, so that it's very clear, where the candidates are aligning as they're able to share accurate information. So those are some of the ones that I can think of off of the top of my head. There's also the Detroit Justice Center. They do numerous different DEIA programming initiatives, typically aligning with awareness months or different, just like educational events. They typically do something for Pride. They did numerous things for Black History Month. So those are some of the local organizations that I know of off of the top of my head. But when you're able to support local, look up your local grassroots organizations, because they are the ones that are doing work in your community and they are your boots on the ground.
Well, I think we've kind of
Is Access still around on 9 Mile?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's a great organization.
Mhm. Yeah, they have a lot of different resources. I did come across them in my job search. They have lots of different resources, including legal resources. So keep that in mind if anyone ever needs help.
We had a meeting there. It was a fairly more than we used to paying for rent. But we had a meeting there, and it was a union meeting, and we intentionally had it there to expose our membership.
Well, I'm going to say that we've unfortunately reached the end of our time for doing this presentation, and we could probably have a full conference to go into more details about this, but let's all give Dani Penner a word of appreciation. Either wave your hands or send a notice out from. So I want to thank you again, and of course, Dani is been a member and one of the more active members, as I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of Gray Panthers. So we really appreciate you, Dani. And we're going to have a discussion about how we can do more outreach at the beginning of our board meeting. So for those of you who are on this call, or if you're not a board member, you're welcome to sit in, but you don't get to vote. But in either case, we'll be having Dani and Dave and I will be having a special focus and report on how can we expand our membership, how can we expand our capacity to do justice work. So that'll be coming up here in just a few minutes at our board meeting. So I'm going to again say thank you to you, Dani, and we'll see you at the board meeting in probably about 5 minutes. For those of you who